The smoke machine roared to life at 6 a.m. sharp, belching thick grey clouds that rolled across the pristine lawn like a vengeful ghost. Karen Martinez stood frozen at her kitchen window, coffee mug trembling in her manicured hands, watching her million-dollar view disappear behind a wall of artificial fog. She had no idea that her complaint about a simple chimney would unleash a neighbor's fury so calculated, so devastating, that it would expose secrets buried deeper than any foundation, secrets that would destroy everything she'd built, one perfectly timed puff at a time. David Chen had always prided himself on being a reasonable man. At 42, he'd weathered corporate layoffs, a messy divorce, and the challenge of raising his teenage daughter Emma alone. The modest craftsman house on Maple Street wasn't much, but it was theirs, complete with the original 1920s brick chimney that had been grandfathered in when the neighborhood transformed from working class to luxury estates. The chimney stood exactly 37 feet tall. David knew this because he'd measured it 3 times after Karen Martinez moved in next door and immediately began what she called improving the aesthetic harmony of the block. "It's a beautiful morning, isn't it?" Karen's voice carried that particular tone of manufactured pleasantness that made David's teeth ache. She appeared at their shared property line wearing yoga pants that probably cost more than his monthly grocery budget, her platinum blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that screamed personal trainer appointments. David looked up from where he was installing a new mailbox post. "Sure is. Emma's got a soccer game later, so, actually, David, I wanted to discuss something with you." Karen's smile faltered slightly. "It's about your chimney." The words hung in the morning air like a challenge. David set down his hammer and turned to face her fully. "What about it?" "Well, it's blocking my view of the mountains." She gestured toward the towering peaks visible beyond the roofline. "When I bought this house, that view was a major selling point. I'm sure you can understand." David's jaw tightened. The chimney had been there for over a century. Karen's house, a sterile glass and steel monument to new money, had been built just 8 months ago. The chimney was here first, Karen. By about 90 years. I'm not disputing that. Her voice took on that patient tone people used when explaining something to a child. "But I'm hoping we can work something out. I've had contractors look at it, and they say it could be lowered by about 15 feet without affecting functionality." "You've had contractors look at my chimney?" "Just from the street, of course. I wouldn't trespass." The implication was clear, she'd already researched solutions before bringing him the problem. "I'm willing to pay for the work, naturally. It would benefit both our property values." David felt heat rising in his chest. "Karen, that chimney is part of the original structure. It's been through earthquakes, storms, and decades of use. I'm not cutting it down because it interferes with your view." Karen's smile grew sharper. "I was hoping you'd be reasonable about this." "I am being reasonable." "The answer is no." "David, I think you're misunderstanding this situation." Karen's voice dropped to a whisper, forcing him to lean closer. "This neighborhood has certain standards. When I moved in, several residents expressed concern about properties that don't maintain those standards. Properties that might, shall we say, lower the overall quality of the area." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. David had heard about the informal homeowners association that Karen had organized within months of moving in. They had no legal authority, but they had influence. The kind of influence that could make life uncomfortable for someone who didn't fit in. "Are you threatening me, Karen?" "I'm trying to help you avoid an unpleasant situation." She stepped back, her pleasant mask sliding back into place. "Think about it. For Emma's sake, if nothing else. I'd hate for her to have to deal with neighborhood tensions." David's vision tunneled. The mention of his daughter crossed a line he hadn't even known existed. "Get off my property." "I'm technically on the property line, get off my property." Karen raised her hands in mock surrender. "Fine. But this conversation isn't over, David. The chimney is still a problem, and problems need solutions." She turned and walked back toward her house, her yoga pants a splash of neon against the manicured lawn. David watched her go, his hands clenched into fists. "Dad." Emma's voice came from the front door. She stood there in her soccer uniform, cleats dangling from her fingers. Everything okay? David forced his shoulders to relax. Just neighbor stuff, Em. Nothing to worry about. But as he watched Karen disappear into her glass fortress, David knew it wasn't nothing. It was the beginning of something that would consume far more than just his morning. That evening, David sat in his living room with a beer and his laptop, researching property law. The chimney was definitely legal, grandfathered in and protected by municipal codes. But legal didn't mean safe. Not when you were dealing with someone who had the resources and connections to make your life miserable. The doorbell rang at 8:17 p.m. David opened it to find a nervous-looking man in an expensive suit holding a clipboard. Mr. Chen. I'm Brad Whitmore from the City Planning Department. I need to speak with you about a complaint that's been filed regarding your chimney. David's blood pressure spiked. What kind of complaint? A neighbor has filed a formal grievance stating that your chimney poses a potential safety hazard and may violate current building codes. I need to schedule an inspection. The chimney has been there for a century. It's grandfathered in. Brad shifted uncomfortably. Yes, well, there are concerns about its current condition and whether it meets modern safety standards. The complaint alleges that it's been modified without proper permits. Modified how? According to the filing, there's been recent work done on the structure without city approval. I need to verify whether that's accurate. David's mind raced. He'd done routine maintenance, cleaning, minor mortar repairs, but nothing that required permits. Who filed this complaint? I'm not at liberty to say, but it came through official channels. I'll need to schedule the inspection for some time. Next week. After Brad left, David called his friend Mike, who worked for the city. Mike's voice was grim when he answered. Dave, I heard about the complaint. It's Karen Martinez. She's been calling every department, claiming your chimney is a fire hazard and that you've been doing unpermitted work. That's insane. I haven't done anything that needs permits. I know, but she's got connections. Her husband sits on the city council. She's already got them scheduling a comprehensive inspection, and between you and me, they are looking for reasons to side with her. David felt the walls closing in. What are my options? Fight it, but it's going to cost you lawyers, appeals, inspector fees. Even if you win, you're looking at months of bureaucratic hell. After hanging up, David stared at his chimney through the window. In the growing darkness, it looked like a finger pointing accusingly at the sky. Karen had escalated this from a neighborly disagreement to an official war, and she'd done it in less than 12 hours. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, "Hope you reconsider. Things could get much worse." A concerned neighbor, David's hands shook as he typed back, "Bring it on." But as he hit send, he realized he'd just declared war on someone who played by different rules than he did. Someone who had money, connections, and apparently no conscience about using them. The next morning, David woke to find 3 official notices taped to his door: a building code violation, a request for historical documentation of all work performed on the structure, and a notice that his property was under review for potential zoning violations. Karen had been busy. As David read through the legal documents, Emma came downstairs for breakfast. She took one look at his face and asked, "Dad, what's wrong?" "Nothing I can't handle, Em." But as he watched her eat cereal, David made a decision that would change everything. Karen Martinez thought she could use the system to bully him into submission. She thought her money and connections made her untouchable. She was about to learn that some people, when pushed too far, stop playing by the rules entirely. David picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd memorized but never thought he'd use. "Hello, Eddie. It's David Chen. Remember that favor you said you owed me? I'm ready to collect." The turning point, Eddie Vasquez had been David's college roommate and remained one of his closest friends despite taking a very different path in life. While David had gone into accounting, Eddie had discovered a talent for what he called creative problem solving. His business card read Special Events Coordinator, but what he really did was help people make statements that couldn't be ignored. "You want to do what?" Eddie's voice crackled through the phone. I want to make my chimney smoke. A lot. Starting tomorrow morning. Dave, you can't just wait. Why do you want to do this? David explained the situation, his voice growing harder with each detail. Eddie listened without interrupting, occasionally making sounds of disbelief. Jesus, Dave. She really went full nuclear, didn't she? I tried to be reasonable. She wanted to play dirty. And you're sure about this? Because once we start, there's no going back. This is going to escalate things beyond anything you can imagine. David looked out his window at Ka. Eddie arrived at 11 p.m. the next night, driving an unmarked van that looked like it belonged to a plumber or electrician. David met him at the back gate, and together they unloaded equipment that seemed far too sophisticated for a simple prank. Jesus, Eddie, this looks like military hardware. Close. Hollywood, actually. This is a Froggy's Fog Poseidon P3, the same machine they used for the battle scenes in that superhero movie last year. Eddie patted the sleek black device with obvious affection. This baby can pump out 20,000 cubic feet of fog per minute. Dense, white, and completely harmless. 20,000 cubic feet. Think of it as nature's middle finger. The fog will roll across her lawn like a tsunami, and there's not a damn thing she can do about it legally. You're just using your fireplace, right? David helped Eddie carry the machine up to the attic, where they positioned it near the chimney base. The setup was more complex than David had expected: timers, remote controls, and what looked like a small computer that Eddie connected to his phone. This is the beauty of the system, Eddie explained as he calibrated the machine. It's connected to a weather app. If it's windy and the fog will blow away from her house, it won't activate. We want maximum impact, not wasted effort. You've thought of everything. I've been doing this for 15 years, Dave. The key to a successful campaign is precision. Every morning at 6 a.m., when Princess Karen is having her coffee and admiring her view, she's going to get a face full of fog. But only when conditions are perfect for maximum coverage. They worked in silence for the next hour, running power cables and testing the system. Finally, Eddie stepped back and admired their work. Tomorrow morning, she's going to think your house is on fire. She'll probably call the fire department. Will we get in trouble for using your fireplace? Nah. Just make sure you've got some wood burning in there when they show up. The smoke machine fog is odorless, but you want that wood smoke smell to sell the illusion. Eddie showed David how to operate the remote control, a simple device with start, stop, and intensity controls. You can trigger it manually if you want to time it perfectly. Just remember, Dave, once you push that button, there's no going back. She's going to escalate. Let her. Eddie studied his friend's face in the dim attic light. You're really pissed, aren't you? She filed 4 more complaints today. They are threatening to condemn the chimney as a public safety hazard. My lawyer says it could take months to fight, and even then, there's no guarantee we'll win. What? About Emma? How's she handling this? David's jaw tightened. She asked me today if we were going to have to move. She's scared, Eddie. Her own bedroom window faces Karen's house, and she's afraid to look out because she knows that woman is watching, waiting for us to make a mistake. Then let's give her something to really watch. The next morning, David woke at 5:45 a.m. He'd barely slept, his mind racing with anticipation and second thoughts. Through his bedroom window, he could see Karen's kitchen, already lit up. She was an early riser, which made the timing perfect. He went downstairs and started a fire in the fireplace, real wood, plenty of it. The smell of burning oak filled the house, mixing with the coffee he'd brewed extra strong. He needed to be alert for whatever came next. At 5:58 a.m., David climbed to the attic and positioned himself at the small window that overlooked Karen's property. She was exactly where Eddie had predicted, standing at her kitchen island with a steaming mug, staring out at the mountains. David held the remote control and watched the digital clock on Eddie's equipment. 5 hours 59 minutes and 45 seconds of 5 hours 59 minutes and 50 seconds. 5 hours 59 minutes and 55 seconds at 6 a.m. He pressed the button. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Thick, white fog began pouring from the chimney like a volcanic eruption. Within seconds, it had formed a massive cloud that rolled across the yard with supernatural speed, driven by the perfect weather conditions Eddie had programmed. Karen's reaction was everything David had hoped for and more. She froze mid-sip, her mug halfway to her lips as the wall of fog approached her windows. Then she jerked backward, nearly dropping her coffee, and reached for her phone. The fog kept coming. It rolled across her manicured lawn, swallowed her imported Japanese maple tree, and pressed against her floor-to-ceiling windows like a living thing. Within 3 minutes, her entire backyard was invisible. David watched Karen pace frantically in her kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. He could see her gesturing wildly, probably describing a house fire to the 911 operator. The fog was so thick that her own house disappeared from view, leaving only the ghostly glow of her kitchen lights. The fire department arrived 12 minutes later, 3 trucks, sirens wailing, lights flashing. David met them at his front door, wearing his bathrobe and looking appropriately confused. Someone reported a possible structure fire, the fire chief said. He was a big man with kind eyes and the weathered face of someone who'd seen everything. Fire? No, sir. Just using the fireplace. David gestured toward the living room, where the wood fire crackled peacefully. Is there a problem? The chief looked at the chimney, which was still pumping out fog, then at David's calm demeanor. Sir, that's an unusual amount of smoke for a simple fireplace. It's been burning a little heavy lately. I've been meaning to have it cleaned. The chief walked around the house, checking for signs of actual fire. His men did the same, using thermal imaging equipment to scan for hot spots. They found nothing unusual, the fireplace was burning normally, the chimney was structurally sound, and there were no signs of danger. Everything looks fine, the chief said finally. But you might want to have that chimney serviced. Heavy smoke like that can indicate a blockage or ventilation issue. I'll call someone today. Thanks for checking. As the fire trucks pulled away, David saw Karen storming across the yard toward him. She was still in her pajamas, expensive silk things that probably cost more than his monthly car payment, and her face was flushed with anger. You did this on purpose, she shouted. Did what? Used my fireplace. That's not normal smoke. That's some kind of machine. David looked at his chimney, which was still producing impressive amounts of fog. It's just wood smoke, Karen. Maybe. You should have your eyes checked. Don't play games with me, David. I know what you're doing. I'm heating my house. Which is legal. Unlike harassing your neighbors with false complaints. Karen's eyes narrowed. You think you're clever? You think this changes anything? I have lawyers, David. Good ones. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be lucky to live in a cardboard box. And I have a fireplace. A perfectly legal, grandfathered-in fireplace that I can use whenever I want. Karen turned and stalked back to her house, her silk pajamas billowing in the artificial fog. David watched her go, feeling a satisfaction he hadn't experienced in months. For the first time since this nightmare began, he'd been the one in control. The fog continued for another hour, gradually dissipating as the machine's timer ran down. By 7:30 a.m., Karen's yard was visible again, but her perfect view of the mountains remained obscured by wisps of artificial mist. David's phone rang. It was his lawyer. David, I just got a call from the city. Karen Martinez is claiming you're operating some kind of industrial equipment without permits. She's demanding an immediate inspection. Let her inspect. It's just a fireplace. She's also filing a nuisance complaint and threatening to sue for property damage. She claims the smoke is affecting her air quality and violating environmental regulations. David felt his good mood evaporate. Can she do that? She can try. But David, whatever you're doing, you need to be careful. She's got resources and she's not going to stop until she gets what she wants. After hanging up, David realized that Eddie had been right, this was just the beginning. Karen wasn't going to back down, and neither was he. The war had officially begun. But as he prepared Emma's breakfast and tried to pretend everything was normal, David couldn't shake the feeling. That he'd just lit a fuse to something much bigger than a simple neighbor dispute. The fog machine had been perfectly legal, completely harmless, and absolutely devastating to Karen's peace of mind. It was also exactly the kind of provocation that would drive someone like her to desperate measures. That afternoon, David came home from work to find Emma sitting on the front porch, her soccer ball in her lap, looking miserable. "Hey, Em. Why aren't you at practice? Coach cancelled it. He said there were complaints about the team using the field behind Mrs. Martinez's house. Something about noise violations." David's blood ran cold. "What kind of complaints?" "I don't know. But some of the other parents are saying it's because of whatever's going on between you and her." "Dad, are we in trouble?" David sat down beside his daughter, his mind racing. Karen had found a new target, not just him, but Emma's activities. Her friends, her normal teenage life. The woman was systematically trying to isolate them, to make their lives so miserable that they'd have no choice but to surrender. "We are not in trouble, Em. But things might get a little complicated for a while." "Because of the chimney?" "Because some people think they can push other people around. But they are wrong." Emma looked at him with eyes that seemed too old for her 14 years. "Dad, what are you going to do?" David thought about the fog machine in his attic, about Karen's threats, about the legal battles ahead. Then he thought about his daughters. David's fog machine had been operating for exactly 1 week when Karen Martinez made her first strategic mistake. She underestimated how far a desperate man would go to protect his family. The morning started like all the others, 6 a.m. sharp. The chimney erupted in a spectacular display of artificial fog, and Karen's million-dollar view vanished behind a wall of white. But this time, David was ready for her counterattack. He'd positioned himself at Emma's bedroom window, which offered a perfect view of Karen's backyard. Through his binoculars, he watched her pace frantically in her kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. Then she did something different. She grabbed a small device from her counter and walked outside. "What are you up to, Karen?" David muttered, adjusting the focus. Karen positioned herself at the property line and held up what looked like a professional-grade air quality monitor. She was taking readings, documenting them, building a case. But she was also trespassing on his property to get the most dramatic readings possible. David smiled grimly and reached for his phone. "Eddie, I need you to see this." "Already?" "Dave, it's barely dawn. She's on my property with some kind of testing equipment. Can you get here with a camera? Give me 20 minutes." While he waited, David watched Karen work methodically through her yard, taking readings and photos. She was building a legal case, documenting every wisp of fog as evidence of environmental harassment. But she was also making a critical error. She was so focused on gathering evidence that she hadn't noticed the real trap David had set. Eddie arrived with professional photography equipment and a wicked smile. "Is she still out there?" "Back corner of the yard. She's got some kind of air quality meter." "Perfect. Dave, please tell me you've got security cameras." 3 of them. Motion activated, infrared capable, and all pointing at the property line. "You beautiful, paranoid bastard. She's about to hand us the war." They positioned themselves at different windows and began documenting Karen's activities. She was completely absorbed in her work, taking measurements and photos with scientific precision. She also stepped onto David's property at least 6 times, each transgression clearly recorded. At 7:15 a.m., just as the fog was beginning to dissipate, Karen made her crucial mistake. She climbed over the low stone wall that marked the property line and walked directly to the base of David's chimney, holding her air quality monitor up to the brick. "Got it," Eddie whispered, his camera clicking rapidly. "That's criminal trespassing, and we've got her dead to rights." But Karen wasn't finished. She pulled out a small plastic bag and began collecting what looked like residue from the base of the chimney. Then she scraped some material from the bricks themselves into a separate container. "What the hell is she doing?" David asked. "Gathering evidence. Probably going to have it tested, claim it's hazardous material or something." Eddie's camera never stopped clicking. "But she's committing about 4 different crimes to get it." David watched Karen work with the focused intensity of a scientist. She was smart, methodical, and absolutely convinced she was going to win this war. She was also completely unaware that her every move was being documented by multiple cameras. After Karen returned to her house, David and Eddie reviewed the footage. The evidence was overwhelming: clear shots of her trespassing, taking unauthorized samples, and even attempting to peer into David's windows. "This is gold, Dave. She just handed us a restraining order on a silver platter. Will it be enough to stop her? It'll slow her down. But more importantly, it'll make her desperate. And desperate people make bigger mistakes." David's phone rang. It was his lawyer, sounding tired and stressed. "David, I've got bad news. Karen Martinez filed a formal complaint with the Environmental Protection Agency. She's claiming you're operating an unlicensed industrial facility that's producing hazardous air pollutants." "That's insane. It's just a fireplace." She's got air quality readings, photographic evidence, and what she claims are samples of hazardous materials. The EPA is taking it seriously. David felt his stomach drop. What does that mean? It means they are going to investigate. And if they find anything that violates environmental regulations, they can shut down your fireplace entirely and fine you into bankruptcy. But it's just wood smoke and water vapor. You and I know that. But the EPA doesn't. And Karen Martinez has presented a very compelling case that you're deliberately creating a public health hazard. After hanging up, David stared at the footage of Karen trespassing on his property. She'd escalated from annoying neighbor to dangerous enemy, and she was using the full weight of federal bureaucracy to destroy him. "Eddie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Can they actually shut down my fireplace? If they find anything that violates environmental regulations, yeah. But Dave, there's something else you need to know. I've been doing some research on your neighbor." "What kind of research?" Eddie pulled out his phone and showed David a series of news articles. Karen Martinez isn't just some rich housewife. She's the former VP of Environmental Compliance for Morrison Industries. She knows exactly how to weaponize EPA regulations. David's blood ran cold. She's a professional. She's been doing this for 20 years. Taking down companies that don't comply with environmental laws is literally her job. Or was, until she retired last year. So she knows exactly how to destroy me. She knows how to try. But she also just committed multiple felonies to gather her evidence. And I've got it all on camera. David looked at the footage again, seeing Karen's activities in a new light. She wasn't just a vindictive neighbor, she was a skilled professional who knew how to manipulate the system. But she was also someone who'd gotten so comfortable with her power that she'd forgotten basic legal boundaries. "What do you think we should do? Fight fire with fire. She wants to play the professional game. Let's show her what happens when the rules apply to everyone." That afternoon, David filed a police report for criminal trespassing, supported by multiple camera angles and timestamps. He also filed a civil complaint for property damage and harassment, including Karen's threats against Emma's activities. The police response was swift and decisive. Officer Maria Santos arrived at Karen's house at 3:30 p.m. with a warrant and a very serious expression. David watched from his window as Karen answered the door, her face shifting from confusion to outrage. As Officer Santos explained the charges, the conversation grew heated, with Karen gesturing wildly and pointing toward David's house. "She's not taking this well," Emma observed, joining her father at the window. "Good. Maybe she'll realize that actions have consequences." "Dad, are we really going to win this?" David looked at his daughter, seeing the worry in her eyes. She'd been living under this cloud for weeks, watching her father wage war against someone who seemed untouchable. But for the first time since this began, David felt genuinely confident. "Yeah, Em. We are going to win." But even as he said it, David knew that Karen Martinez wasn't going to surrender easily. She'd spent her career destroying people who crossed her, and she had resources he couldn't match. The trespassing charges were just a setback, not a defeat. That evening, David's phone rang. The caller ID showed Karen's number. "Hello, David." Her voice was cold, controlled, completely different from the panicked woman he'd seen that morning. "Karen. You think you're clever, don't you? Filing charges, playing the victim. But you have no idea who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A trespasser and a bully." Karen's laugh was sharp and humorless. "I've destroyed companies worth billions of dollars, David. I've ended careers, shuttered factories, and sent executives to prison. You think your little fireplace games are going to stop me? I think you're desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. Oh, I'm just getting started. The EPA investigation is only the beginning. I have friends in the IRS, the health department, and the school board. By the time I'm finished, you'll be audited, inspected, and investigated by so many agencies that you'll be begging me to take your house. And you'll be in jail for trespassing. A misdemeanor. A slap on the wrist. But what I'm going to do to you is going to last for years." The line went dead. David stared at his phone, feeling the weight of Karen's threats. She wasn't just angry, she was planning something comprehensive, something that would use every lever of government power to destroy him. But as he looked at his chimney, still standing proud against the evening sky, David realized that Karen had made a crucial error. She'd revealed her true nature, her professional background, and her intentions. She was no longer just a neighbor with a view problem, she was a genuine threat to his family's safety and security. And that changed everything. David climbed to his attic and checked the fog machine's programming. Tomorrow morning, the chimney would smoke again. But now it wasn't just about annoying Karen Martinez. It was about survival. He opened his laptop and began researching EPA regulations, environmental compliance laws, and Karen's professional history. If she wanted to play the expert game, he'd become an expert too. The war was escalating beyond anything either of them had imagined. But David Chen was no longer just defending his chimney, he was fighting for his family's future. The revelation at 11:47 p.m., David's phone buzzed with a text from Eddie, "Check your email." David spent the weekend preparing for war. He converted his dining room into a command center, covering the table with legal documents, photographs, and printed emails. Karen's criminal history spread across one wall like a conspiracy board, connected with red string and annotated with dates and outcomes. Emma found him there Sunday morning, surrounded by coffee cups and evidence folders. "Dad, you look terrible. Thanks for the honesty." David rubbed his eyes and gestured at the wall. "But I think I've found our smoking gun." Emma studied the documents, her expression growing serious. "She really did all this to other people. Morrison Industries, Clearwater Manufacturing, Pacific Lumber, 6 companies over 15 years. Same pattern every time, she'd find minor violations, falsify evidence to make them look worse, then use regulatory pressure to shut them down. Why? Power. Control. Some people get addicted to destroying things." David pointed to a particular cluster of documents. "But look at this, every single case was overturned on appeal. Every company she destroyed was eventually vindicated. She's not just a bully, Em. She's incompetent. So why did it take so long for anyone to catch her? Because by the time the appeals went through, the damage was done. Companies closed. People lost jobs, families were destroyed. Even when they won, they'd already lost everything." Emma picked up a photograph of Karen trespassing on their property. "But we caught her making mistakes." "Exactly. She's been out of the game for 2 years and she's gotten sloppy. She thinks she's still untouchable." David's phone rang. The caller ID showed his lawyer's number. "David, we need to talk. The EPA investigator is coming tomorrow morning and Karen Martinez has provided them with quite a file." "What kind of file?" "Air quality readings that suggest you are producing dangerous levels of particulate matter. Chemical analysis that claims to show industrial pollutants. And testimony from other neighbors about unusual smoke patterns." David felt his stomach clench. Other neighbors? Apparently she's been canvassing the block, getting people to sign statements about your chimney affecting their health and property. Values. That's impossible. The fog machine produces nothing but water vapor, and David stopped, realizing his mistake. Water vapor and what, David? Nothing. Just a wood smoke from the fireplace. David, I need to ask you directly. Are you operating any equipment that could be construed as industrial or commercial? David looked at the remote control for the fog machine sitting on his desk. I'm heating my house with a legally grandfathered fireplace. Okay. But whatever you're doing, the EPA investigator is going to be thorough. Dr. Sarah Kim is known for being extremely detailed in her assessments. After hanging up, David realized that Karen had outmaneuvered him. While he'd been gathering evidence of her past crimes, she'd been building a federal case that could destroy him. She'd played her experience and connections perfectly, turning his own fog machine into evidence of environmental crimes. But as David stared at the wall of documents, he noticed something Karen hadn't anticipated. Her pattern wasn't just about destroying companies, it was about control. She needed to be the expert, the authority, the one who knew more than everyone else. And that need for control was about to become her downfall. David called Eddie. I need you to do something crazy. How crazy? I need you to disable the fog machine. What? Dave, that's our only weapon. No, it's a trap. Karen wants to catch me operating industrial equipment. So tomorrow morning, when the EPA investigator shows up, there's going to be nothing but a regular fireplace burning regular wood. And then what? Then Karen Martinez is going to have to explain how she gathered evidence of industrial pollutants from a machine that doesn't exist. Eddie was quiet for a long moment. You're going to make her look like a liar. I'm going to let her make herself look like a liar. She can't resist being the expert, Eddie. She's going to push too hard, claim too much, and contradict herself. And if it doesn't work, then we are screwed anyway. But if it does work, Karen Martinez is going to destroy her own credibility in front of a federal investigator. That evening, Eddie came over and carefully dismantled the fog machine. They carried it out in pieces, storing it in Eddie's van like evidence of a crime that had never been committed. Dave, you realize this is insane, right? You're betting everything on Karen being unable to control herself. Have you met Karen? Control is her addiction. She can't help herself. And if the EPA finds residue from the fog machine, water doesn't leave residue. And Karen's been so focused on gathering dramatic evidence that she's probably contaminated any real samples with her own materials. Monday morning arrived grey and cold. David started a normal fire in his fireplace, oak logs, no additives. Burning clean and producing the light smoke that chimneys had been designed for since medieval times. At 8:30 a.m., Dr. Sarah Kim arrived in a government sedan, followed closely by Karen Martinez in her BMW. David watched from his window as the two women met on the sidewalk, Karen immediately launching into an animated explanation while pointing at his chimney. Dr. Kim was younger than David had expected, with short black hair and the focused demeanor of someone who took her job seriously. She carried a metallic briefcase and what looked like sophisticated monitoring equipment. David answered the door wearing his best concerned citizen expression. Mr. Chen. I'm Dr. Kim from the EPA. I'm here to investigate reports of irregular emissions from your fireplace. Of course. I'm happy to cooperate. Can I ask what kind of irregularities? Dr. Kim consulted her tablet. Reports of excessive smoke production, unusual chemical signatures, and possible operation of unlicensed industrial equipment. Industrial equipment? It's just a fireplace. Would you like to see it? David led Dr. Kim through his house to the living room, where the fire crackled peacefully. She immediately began taking readings with her equipment, scanning the air for pollutants and particulates. The levels seem normal, she murmured, checking her instruments. Karen appeared at the front door without knocking, her face flushed with excitement. Doctor, you need to test the chimney itself. That's where the real contamination is. Dr. Kim looked up sharply. I'm conducting a systematic investigation. Please let me work. But I have samples. Chemical analysis that shows industrial Pollutants. Karen pulled out her plastic bags from the previous week. This is proof of illegal activity. How did you obtain these samples? Karen hesitated for just a moment. I collected them from the property line. David stepped forward. Actually, Dr. Kim, I have security footage that shows Ms. Martinez trespassing on my property to collect those samples. Is that true, Ms. Martinez? I was gathering evidence of environmental crimes. Someone has to protect this neighborhood from illegal activities. Dr. Kim's expression grew cold. Tampering with evidence and trespassing on private property are serious offenses. I'll need to see this footage, Mr. Chen. David led them to his computer, where the security footage played in crystal clarity. Karen's multiple trespassing incidents were undeniable, including her attempts to collect samples directly from his chimney. These samples are inadmissible, Dr. Kim said firmly. They were illegally obtained and potentially contaminated. Karen's composure began to crack. You don't understand. I'm a professional environmental compliance specialist. I know illegal operations when I see them. According to my preliminary readings, Mr. Chen's fireplace is operating within normal parameters. That's impossible. Karen's voice rose. Last week the smoke was so thick you couldn't see across the yard. He's running some kind of industrial fog machine. Dr. Kim stared at Karen. A fog machine? Yes. It produces massive amounts of artificial smoke designed to block my view and damage my property. Ms. Martinez, are you claiming that Mr. Chen is using a fog machine to create fireplace smoke? David watched Karen realize her mistake, but she was too deep in expert mode to stop. Not fireplace smoke. Industrial fog. Designed to harass neighbors and create environmental hazards. Dr. Kim looked at David's fireplace, then back at Karen. Are you suggesting that a fog machine can somehow connect to a wood-burning fireplace? The emissions of the chemical signatures. The chemical signatures in your illegally obtained samples. Karen's face went white as she realized the trap she'd walked into. She'd been so eager to demonstrate her expertise that she'd contradicted herself, admitted to crimes, and made scientifically impossible claims. Dr. Kim packed up her equipment with obvious irritation. Mr. Chen, your fireplace appears to be operating normally. Ms. Martinez, I'll be reporting your interference with this investigation to the appropriate authorities. You can't do this. I know what I saw. You saw a man using his legal fireplace. And you trespassed on his property to collect contaminated evidence while making unfounded claims about impossible equipment. After Dr. Kim left, Karen stood in David's driveway, her carefully constructed case in ruins. Her face cycled through shock, rage, and something approaching panic. This isn't over, she said finally. Yes, it is, David replied. Dr. Kim is going to file a report that discredits everything you've claimed. Your trespassing charges are still pending. And I'm pretty sure the EPA doesn't appreciate having their time wasted with fantasies about fog machines. Karen TUR. David didn't sleep for 3 days. He spent every waking hour preparing for the Child Protective Services visit, documenting his home environment, gathering character references, and building a case that Emma was safe, loved, and thriving. But beneath his methodical preparation, rage burned like a furnace. Karen Martinez had crossed the final line. She'd targeted his daughter, an innocent child who'd done nothing but exist in the wrong house at the wrong time. And for that, David was going to destroy her completely. The CPS investigator, Ms. Rebecca Torres, arrived Wednesday morning with a clipboard and the weary expression of someone who'd seen too many broken homes. David met her at the door, his house spotless and his documentation organized. Mr. Chen, I'm here regarding a complaint about Emma's living environment. May I come in? Of course. Can you tell me the specifics of the complaint? Ms. Torres consulted her notes. Reports of ongoing harassment, environmental hazards, and an unstable home situation that may be affecting the child's well-being. David led her through the house, pointing out Emma's clean room, her homework area, the stocked refrigerator, and the general atmosphere of a normal, functioning home. Ms. Torres took notes but seemed increasingly confused. Mr. Chen, this doesn't Match the description in the complaint. The report suggested dangerous living conditions and neglect. Can you tell me who filed the complaint? The reporting party wished to remain anonymous, but they claimed to be a concerned community member. With direct knowledge of the situation, David pulled out his file of documentation. Ms. Torres, I think you should know that I've been involved in a property dispute with my neighbor, Karen Martinez. She's been escalating the situation for weeks, and I believe this complaint is retaliation. Ms. Torres stuttered the timeline David had prepared: the original Chimney complaint, the legal threats, the EPA investigation, and Karen's trespassing charges. Her expression grew increasingly serious. This is quite comprehensive. Do you have any proof that Ms. Martinez filed this report? Not direct proof, but the timing is suspicious. The complaint was filed the day after she lost the EPA investigation. Mr. Chen, I need to interview Emma privately. Is she home? Emma appeared in the doorway as if summoned, wearing her school uniform and carrying her backpack. She looked tired but determined. Hi, Ms. Torres. Dad said you might want to talk to me. The interview lasted 30 minutes. David waited in the kitchen, listening to Emma's clear, honest answers about her life, her relationship with her father, and the stress of the neighbor situation. When they finished, Ms. Torres looked relieved. Emma is articulate, well-adjusted, and clearly cares about her father. There's no evidence of neglect or unsafe conditions. She turned to David. However, I do need to address the ongoing conflict with your neighbor. Prolonged disputes can affect children, even in stable homes. What do you recommend? Resolution. Whatever this is about, it needs to end. For Emma's sake. After Ms. Torres left, David knew she was right. The war with Karen had consumed his life, and it was affecting Emma despite his best efforts. But Karen had made resolution impossible by attacking his daughter. Now there was only one way this could end. David called his lawyer. I want to file a restraining order against Karen Martinez. Harassment, trespassing, filing false reports, everything. That might be difficult to prove, David. I have security footage, witness statements, and now a false CPS report. She's escalated to attacking my daughter. I want her stopped permanently. While his lawyer prepared the paperwork, David made another call. Eddie, I need one final favor. Name it. I want to hold a press conference. A what? Karen Martinez is a public figure. Former environmental compliance officer, history of falsifying evidence, currently facing criminal charges for trespassing. I think the local news would be very interested in a story about how she's harassing a single father and filing false reports against his teenage daughter. Eddie was quiet for a moment. Dave, are you sure about this? Going public changes everything. She went after Emma. I'm done playing defense. That afternoon, David contacted every local news outlet with a simple pitch, a story about how a disgraced environmental compliance officer was using false reports and government agencies to harass a neighbor in a property dispute. 3 stations agreed to interviews, but David's nuclear option came with an unexpected side effect. At 4:30 p.m., his doorbell rang. Karen Martinez stood on his porch, and for the first time since their war began, she looked genuinely afraid. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Please. 5 minutes. Oh. I think I made a mistake. David almost laughed. A mistake? You called CPS on my daughter. You tried to have Emma taken away from me. I was angry. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking very clearly. You wanted to hurt me in the worst possible way. Karen's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. You don't understand. This house, this view, it's all I have left. My career is over, my reputation is destroyed, and all I wanted was to look at the mountains from my kitchen window. So you tried to destroy my family. I tried to make you understand how much this means to me. David stared at her, seeing not the polished professional who'd moved in 8 months ago, but a broken woman who'd lost everything and was clinging to the last symbol of her former power. Karen, you could have just talked to me. 8 months ago, if you'd explained the situation, asked nicely, maybe offered to help with the cost, we could have worked something out. I'm not used to asking. I'm used to making demands and having them followed. And that's why you're here now, begging me not to destroy what's left of your life. Karen flinched. The press conference. You're going to tell them about Morrison Industries, about the falsified evidence. I'm going to tell them about a woman who filed false reports against a child because she couldn't have her way. David. Please. I'll drop everything. All the complaints, all the legal action. I'll even pay for any damage I've caused. Just don't go public. David looked at this woman who'd terrorized his family for months, who'd used her professional expertise to try to destroy him, who'd attacked his daughter when everything else failed. And he realized that her greatest fear wasn't jail or fines, it was public humiliation. The final destruction of her professional reputation. Karen, why should I believe you'll honor any agreement? You've lied, trespassed, and filed false reports. Your word means nothing. Because I'm done. I can't fight you anymore. You've won. Have I? Because yesterday you were willing to have my daughter taken away rather than admit defeat. Karen's composure finally shattered completely. She began to cry, not the manipulative tears of someone trying to gain sympathy, but the raw sobs of someone who'd finally realized the full scope of their actions. I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted my view back. David felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness, that would take time he might never have. But the recognition that Karen Martinez was no longer a threat. She was just a broken woman who'd destroyed her own life in pursuit of something that had never really mattered. Here's what's going to happen, Karen. You're going to formally withdraw every complaint you filed. You're going to pay my legal fees. You're going to issue a public apology for the false CPS report. And you're going to leave my family alone forever. And the press conference depends on how well you follow through. Karen nodded frantically. Yes. Anything. I'll do anything. And Karen, if you ever, and I mean ever, so much as look at my daughter wrong, I will destroy you so completely that you'll wish you'd never heard of Maple Street. After Karen left, David stood in his living room and looked at his chimney. The war was over, but it had cost both of them more than either had imagined. Karen had lost her reputation, her peace, and her sense of control. David had lost his faith in reasonable solutions and his daughter's sense of security. The next morning, David received a formal letter from Karen's lawyer withdrawing all complaints and a check for $15,000 to cover his legal expenses. The CPS case was closed with a notation that the complaint had been withdrawn by the reporting party. Emma found him reading the letter over coffee. Is it really over, Dad? Yeah, Em. It's really over. Do you think she'll keep her word? David looked out the window at Karen's house, where the blinds were drawn and no lights were visible. He hadn't seen her since their conversation, and her BMW hadn't moved from the driveway. I think she's learned that some wars cost more than winning is worth. What about the chimney? David smiled, the first genuine smile he'd managed in weeks. The chimney stays exactly where it is. All 37 feet of it. Emma grinned and hugged him. Good. I like our chimney. Me too, Em. Me too. Epilogue, 6 months later. The for sale sign went up in Karen's yard on a Tuesday morning in spring. David watched from his kitchen window as the realtor hammered the post into the manicured lawn. Wondering if Karen was watching too. He never saw her again. The house sold within a month to a young couple with twin toddlers who introduced themselves with homemade cookies and genuine smiles. They loved the neighborhood, they said, especially the charming older